The entire dojo fell silent the moment the challenge was made. Dozens of students stopped breathing, parents lowered their phones, and even the birds outside seemed to disappear into the stillness of a bright spring afternoon. Standing in the center of the polished wooden floor was a billionaire whose name carried respect across the martial arts world. His black belt bore 8 golden stripes, the mark of an 8th Dan Aikido master who had spent over 40 years perfecting the art of balance, discipline, and control. Across from him stood a quiet single father wearing a faded white gi with patches carefully stitched together by hand. He smiled gently, bowed with sincere respect, and calmly accepted the invitation with words no one expected to hear. He would spar only if the legendary master promised not to cry afterward. Gasps echoed through the hall because everyone believed the humble father had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, humility, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Dad's Soul Diaries. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories that inspire millions around the world. The single father was named Adrian Mercer, a 38-year-old warehouse worker whose hands carried scars earned from years of lifting heavy boxes instead of trophies. Every morning before sunrise, he packed lunches, braided his 8-year-old daughter Hazel's long chestnut hair as best he could, walked her to school, and then rushed to work before spending evenings cleaning offices to make rent. His wife had passed away after a sudden illness 4 years earlier, leaving Adrian with a broken heart and a promise that he would never let their daughter grow up believing life had defeated her father. Money was always short. Their tiny apartment leaked whenever it rained, the refrigerator hummed louder than the television, and some weeks Adrian quietly skipped dinner so Hazel could enjoy an extra serving. Yet every single night they smiled together, read library books, and believed tomorrow would somehow become brighter. Few people knew that before life demanded endless sacrifices, Adrian had spent nearly 15 years studying traditional Aikido under an elderly Japanese instructor who believed true strength was invisible. Adrian never entered tournaments, never sought medals, and never boasted about his skills because his teacher had taught him that real mastery existed only when no one needed to witness it. After his mentor passed away and family responsibilities grew heavier, Adrian quietly stopped training in public. The techniques remained inside him like calm water beneath frozen ice, waiting without pride or anger. On that sunny Saturday, Hazel convinced her father to visit the city's annual martial arts charity exhibition because admission was free for children. She loved watching demonstrations and dreamed of becoming brave enough to defend others from bullies. The event was hosted by billionaire entrepreneur and legendary Aikido Grandmaster Victor Hayashi, a man admired for building global companies while donating millions to youth sports programs. Newspapers often described him as nearly unbeatable on the mat despite his age. His discipline inspired thousands, although success had gradually surrounded him with admirers who rarely challenged his opinions. As spectators filled the spacious dojo flooded with daylight streaming through tall windows, Victor announced an open invitation. Anyone willing could step onto the mat for a respectful sparring demonstration. It was meant to encourage confidence rather than competition, yet everyone hesitated. Students respected him too deeply. Experienced practitioners knew the gap in skill was enormous. Minutes passed with no volunteers. Hazel looked at her father with hopeful eyes that reminded Adrian of promises he could never ignore. She whispered that she wished people understood courage was not about winning but about trying. Adrian smiled warmly, squeezed her shoulder, and quietly walked toward the center of the dojo. Laughter spread softly among some spectators. His uniform looked old. His belt was faded almost gray. His knees showed signs of years of careful repairs. Several younger students assumed he was simply another enthusiastic parent who underestimated the challenge before him. Victor welcomed him with sincere courtesy and asked if he understood whom he was facing. Adrian nodded respectfully. When the billionaire invited him to spar, Adrian answered with that unforgettable smile and gentle condition that Victor promised not to cry afterward. The audience interpreted the remark as arrogance. Hazel alone understood her father well enough to recognize the kindness hidden inside his confidence. The match began beneath warm afternoon sunlight. There was no dramatic music, no shouting, only quiet footsteps gliding across polished wood. Victor attacked first with remarkable speed, expecting to test the father's balance. Yet the moment contact was made, Adrian moved almost effortlessly. He redirected the energy without force, guiding the billionaire harmlessly into a controlled roll that ended with Victor standing again before many people even realized what had happened. Silence replaced the earlier laughter. Victor's eyes narrowed, not with anger but curiosity. This was no beginner. They circled again. This time Victor increased his pace. Every movement displayed decades of disciplined practice. Adrian answered with calm precision that looked almost invisible. Instead of overpowering, he dissolved every attack like sunlight melting morning fog. Spectators leaned forward. Experienced instructors exchanged astonished glances. They recognized movements belonging to an older lineage rarely demonstrated anymore. After several exchanges, Victor finally found himself gently pinned to the mat without pain or humiliation. Adrian immediately released him and stepped backward with another respectful bow. No celebration. No boasting. Only gratitude. The billionaire slowly rose, breathing harder than expected. For the first time in years, someone had reminded him that mastery still had room to grow. Instead of ending the demonstration, Victor invited Adrian to sit beside him for tea beneath the blooming cherry trees outside the dojo. Cameras followed, expecting controversy. What unfolded instead became a lesson remembered long after the sparring itself. Over steaming cups of green tea, Victor asked where Adrian had learned such extraordinary control. Adrian quietly shared the story of his late teacher, his wife's passing, his warehouse job, and the daughter who believed her father could accomplish anything as long as he never surrendered his kindness. Victor listened without interruption. As Adrian described skipping meals so Hazel would never feel hungry, the billionaire looked across the garden toward the little girl happily feeding breadcrumbs to sparrows. She wore second-hand sneakers with carefully glued soles, yet her smile outshined every expensive watch surrounding the wealthy guests. Victor suddenly understood why Adrian had warned him not to cry. The tears had never been about losing a sparring match. They were about remembering what truly mattered. The billionaire realized that somewhere along his journey through success, meetings, investments, and recognition, he had slowly measured achievement through numbers instead of human hearts. Watching Adrian laugh with his daughter despite carrying burdens heavier than most executives could imagine forced Victor to confront a truth no financial report had ever revealed. Within days, Victor quietly visited the warehouse where Adrian worked. He watched unnoticed as the single father encouraged exhausted co-workers, helped an injured employee finish loading a truck, and stayed overtime without asking for extra pay because someone else's child needed medicine. There was no audience. No applause. Only quiet goodness repeated every day. Victor made a decision that surprised his entire company. Rather than offering Adrian charity, he offered partnership. He asked Adrian to become director of a new community foundation combining martial arts education, mentorship, and family support for struggling single parents. Adrian initially refused because he believed others deserved the opportunity more. Victor smiled and explained that leadership belonged to those who never chased it. The foundation transformed abandoned recreation centers into bright daytime training academies filled with laughter instead of fear. Children learned confidence, discipline, and compassion regardless of family income. Parents found counseling, job assistance, and emotional support. Every lesson began with the reminder that strength existed to protect, never to dominate. Hazel became the youngest volunteer, greeting every newcomer with homemade welcome cards decorated using colored pencils. She remembered what loneliness felt like after losing her mother and wanted no child entering the dojo to ever feel invisible again. Months later, one of the boys enrolled through the foundation admitted he had planned to join a violent street gang because he believed nobody cared about him. After meeting Adrian, learning Aikido principles, and finding friends who believed in his future, he chose school instead. His grades improved. His confidence returned. His mother cried tears of relief during graduation. Stories like his multiplied. Journalists initially wanted headlines about the mysterious fighter who humbled a billionaire. Instead, they discovered something far more powerful: two men from completely different worlds proving that humility could unite people better than pride ever could. Victor often joked during public demonstrations that Adrian had kept his promise. The billionaire truly had cried after their first sparring session, not because he had been defeated, but because he had finally remembered why he started practicing martial arts as a young boy. The greatest victory was never standing over another person. It was lifting someone else onto their feet. Years later, visitors entering the community dojo noticed a framed photograph near the entrance. It showed no championship trophy, no expensive cars, and no glamorous ceremony. It simply captured a father and daughter smiling beneath bright afternoon sunlight while sweeping the training floor together after class. Beneath the picture rested a small wooden plaque carved with words Adrian repeated to every student: "The strongest hands are the ones that help others stand again." If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends and family, leave a heartfelt comment telling us what kindness means to you, and subscribe to Dad's Soul Diaries so we can continue sharing stories that remind the world compassion is never wasted. Special request: before this story ends, please comment with the single word, kindness, if you believe one act of humility can completely change another person's life. As the evening sun began to settle beyond the city skyline, Adrian and Hazel walked home carrying nothing more valuable than groceries, laughter, and hope. The billionaire drove away in a luxury car, yet he often admitted that the richest gift he had ever received was not another successful business, another award, or another black belt. It was the quiet lesson taught by an ordinary single father who had lost almost everything except his character. And in a world constantly chasing power, fame, and wealth, that unshakable character became the one treasure that inspired thousands to believe that real greatness begins with a humble heart, grows through sacrifice, and lives forever in every life it chooses to lift.